our next guest, describes herself as an accidental author. Sue Metcalf was inspired by her sister's garden in Devon to start writing The Adventures of Itchybald Scratchet. And she joins me now. Just let's get something sorted out. Who is Itchybald Scratchet?
Itchybald Scratchet is a badger, and my sister called me one day. I'd been taking care of my mother-in-law with dementia and my mother, and she rang me, and I thought perhaps it was one of those calling me, and it was actually my sister. She was really upset because she got a badger living under her shed digging her garden up.
That's not upsetting. That would be wonderful in my world. Mind you, they can be a little destructive.
It was quite destructive, and there were big holes in her garden, so of course she wanted me to see if I can look and see if we could get rid of them in any way. But as you probably know, once badgers have decided that's their home, that's it. And I've since learned they pass down their home through generations of their family, and some sets have been occupied for over 100 years.
Oh, that's it. Cheer her up.
There wasn't any chance that they were going to go anywhere quickly.
Peanuts.
That's
peanuts.
true, yes.
Give them peanuts and they don't dig the lawn up. That's the way to do it. A chap I knew that ran, it was actually Bovey Castle Golf Course, was always being dug up by badgers.
Right.
And his theory was just to put down peanuts and it stopped digging up the course.
Oh, well, it's a nice, I'm sure lots of people will be pleased to hear.
So each book is structured in a special way, but always revolves around Itchybald?
It does. The main character is Itchybald Scratchet, and each book is a story unto itself. Then it leads on to the next one. So it's a series to encourage reading and caring about wildlife and our environment.
Excellent. So what's your background? Have you touched wildlife in your life?
No, not at all. No, the nearest I came obviously was when my sister called about this badger, but since we sort of realised that there is such a vast range of wildlife, and if we're not careful it will all be destroyed by how we react, particularly with plastics and things like that. So in my little books I try to make children aware of what they're doing to the environment and how they can learn and read. I passionately believe in education, so that if a child can read, their job prospects are better and so on. It encourages all sorts of things and opens so many avenues for them to learn.
Well, hooray for that. In fact, I was only watching yesterday and mentioned the tiny seahorse that was found clinging to a Q-tip in the sea. And I know it's probably too late. I'm hoping it's not, but now the world is looking at the damage we're doing to the sea, not just the land. And it is incredible the amount of selfishness that is out there. But if you've got one badger in your life, maybe under your shed or under your sister's shed, tough. Enjoy it whilst it's there.
That's it.
So just to take me through the characters. First of all, you've photocopied this very kindly for me. That is a frilled lizard, isn't it?
It is a frilled lizard, yes. Each book has different characters in because I like it to be quite fast-paced. But at the same time, there are elements that parents or teachers or children themselves could pick up and research into. So the first book, while it's basically an adventure story and it introduces the characters, it basically tells the story of where they're going on their journey, these animals, to try and save their woodland home from being built on.
Right.
Which again is a prominent point at the moment because we are building on land that maybe animals have lived there for quite some time beforehand.
Indeed, and although this country does need to build its houses, some are being just put there for profit rather than for any sort of social aspect.
That's right.
But either or is a frilled lizard, possibly the least cuddly, most unpleasant animal on this planet. It's got a stinking attitude.
It is. Well, my badger travelled, so I won't tell you how, but it'll spoil it. But it's a unique way that he actually gets to Australia, and he gets there by accident. So as you can imagine, he's really hot, and he meets different Australian animals, and one of which is either or, and he guards something very precious in Australia. But either he comes or he goes. He can never quite make up his mind what he's doing.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. Stropple? Who's Stropple?
Stropple is a camel. Again, he is very stroppy. It's a combination of strop and camel. But all the characters have strange names or funny names in them. A lot of it is a play on words. Like in book 2, for example, there's a horse and her name is Naomi.
Oh, that's worse than mine.
And so on.
I salute you for that. Of course, Australia has the largest population of camels.
It does, and in that in book 5 it does actually explain how they got there, and again it's information that maybe perhaps everyone may not know, because I've tried to pick up things that perhaps aren't in general knowledge among children here and so on. So camels actually went to Australia because they were imported to help with the railways. So they were used to build the railways, and then we in our wisdom said, right, off you go then, and they went off. But of course they bred quite happily, so now they have a problem with herds of camels there now.
They do. I'm just trying to remember the 2 explorers that used them to get across the Dead Heart. Not Stuart. No, it's gone. They were. I know they left, I think, about 30, 40 camels from that as well. That particular... I mean, it's rather unthinking. Just cast them free.
It is.
Mind you, Australia did learn when they introduced the rabbit as well.
They did. So it's basically tales told from an animal's point of view.
Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in Bedford.
Right. So all around you then there would have been wildlife. So, but you've waited and waited and waited to...
Well, it just is not something that really occurred to me, I suppose, although obviously they're there. But living more or less in suburbia, you don't see an awful lot of wildlife, maybe the odd squirrel in the garden, and that would have been about it, Yeah. So squirrels or hedgehogs, that sort of thing. But we moved down here over 20 years ago now with my husband's job, and of course the countryside and everything is so beautiful around here anyway, so it was nice to go for walks, and I started to sort of take a small interest then, but it wasn't really until my sister rang with this badger under her shed, and I thought, I know, I'll make up a story to make her smile, that it went from there. And that's really why I call myself an accidental author, because I didn't think, well, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
It didn't work like that. It was just originally just to make my sister laugh. So I'd ring her every morning while we had our coffee, and I'd just ring her with the next instalment, and it just went from there, really.
That's brilliant.
So thank
Brilliant.
you.
And children are picking these up and reading?
They are, yes. I mean, it's really lovely when we're at an event or children know that we're going to be there, and you get a child come along and they're looking for their own pocket money to be able to buy the next book, or and I also want to encourage children when they're out for a walk to look for something up a path or a tree or a bush, and then use their own imagination for an animal, so that when they get home they can draw their own pictures and they can make up their own story, and they can research that animal themselves. So I'm very much hoping that it becomes a project.
I do hope that the next generation can do that, can actually look at wildlife. We've got, actually in my garden at the moment, we've got squirrels, we've got rats, plenty of rats for some strange reason. I guess maybe my fault for feeding the birds. But, wildlife will always try to colonise any garden.
It will, yes. Well, we heard yesterday, though, that the Badger Trust are going to use my character, Itchybald Scratchet, as an ambassador for their school's education programme. So that was quite nice, to hear that, yes.
So what for the future? What else can you bring in?
For the future, well, Itchybald Scratchet continues. I'm now currently working on book 8. So each book is roughly 10,000 words, and it's small enough to put in a bag or, easy enough to carry. They're deliberately not heavy little books. They're just so that you can pick up and read a little bit, maybe research some of the points that are in there and then come back to it.
So he's gone to Australia,
he
and
has.
where else?
At the moment, he is travelling to other countries, but again, I don't want to give anything away or how they get there, because it will spoil the surprise, really, reading them. But he does travel to other countries, and this is part of it. It brings in other animals. Also in the Australian book, when he first gets there, Itchybald Scratchet meets 2 new friends, which are called Pick, who's a crow, and Maguire, because he's an echidna. So that, again, is an unusual sort of animal that maybe children don't know about. And Pick actually has a bad leg, and Echidna helped him to repair his leg with one of his quills. So it's kind of friends helping one another as well.
A spiny echidna.
Yes.
Which is a weird-looking animal.
It is. It's similar to an anteater, I think. It's got a very long snout.
Yeah, it's an anteater crossed with a hedgehog.
Hedgehog, yes.
Which is... What was the other thing? There was the platypus, which is the only animal that lays eggs but suckles with milk.
Yes, strange animal.
So technically it could make its own custard.
Oh.
But it's dreadful. It's bizarre creatures that crop up in Australia. I remember I lived over there from 1964. I was only a toddler. But some of the animals that you come across in those days, they decided to colonise your house.
Oh dear.
It's okay with badgers.
Yeah.
Wallabies, you don't want one of those under your garden shed, I can assure you. Look, it's a pleasure to have met you. Where are these available?
They're available online. Obviously we're hoping they make nice Christmas gifts for people, and so say schools, we go to schools and do little PowerPoint presentations with as well. So they can be purchased online through Itchybald Scratchet or Susie Medcalf. He does have a variety of other friends as well as being the badger. His main best friend is called Enormouse because he is an enormous mouse.
Enormouse.
He's Norm in the books, and he's that size because he likes pizza, which gets him into all sorts of trouble.
Pizza mouse.
Yes.
Not good. Yeah. Watch your weight, boy. Watch your weight.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us
Okay,
today. And we
you're
look forward to seeing